So we have started recording. Perfect. Brilliant. Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Sharon Waxkirsh, founder and director of Academy for Hypnosis, an improved school through the American Council of Hypnotist Examiners and by the Dave Elman Hypnotherapy Institute. Sharon has successfully trained hundreds of dentists, doctors, and surgeons in hypnotherapy. Welcome to the show, Sharon. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you so much, Mike, for having me on Patient Boost. I'm very excited.
I've been really looking forward to this because not only are you a great person to talk to, but what you do is fascinating. So I really think I'm going to get a proper schooling in what you do and how you help dentists and dental practices. So before we go any further, Sharon, tell me a bit more about you. What's your background?
Background's quite an interesting one. I qualified as an animator many years ago. So I really love art. I love drawing. I do a lot of ceramics, which I always say it's really important to keep grounded, especially with the work I do, because obviously a lot in the mind takes you up into the head. And I think being sort of putting your hands in some clay sometimes can feel really, really good. So that's not the how did I get into hypnotherapy is a sort of an odd experience in itself, which I'm not going to go into the whole spiel because it's just too long. But let's just put it this way: I didn't want to be an animator because I didn't actually want to be working on screen all the time on a computer. Little did I know that my entire schooling that I would then create in the future would be via Zooms. Maybe I could continue. I don't know. So it was funny coming out of animation college. We had literally just learned everything we needed to learn about cell animation, using 35mm cameras, using Steenbeck, and boom, the computer came in. So then it was a complete 360. What do I want to do now? Because I did some animation on computer, but I was like, no, this isn't for me. I want to have contact with people. So I was really finding out what it is that I like about having contact, human contact, and so I ended up learning a lot about self-development work and that kind of stuff, and just checking how do we operate, why do we operate. And of course I actually don't see hypnosis very differently from animation. It's all about creativity, your ideas of the mind, our imagination. And so hypnosis is just another exploration. It's another tool. Rather than using my hands to draw, I use my mouth to speak. So it's the same creative tool.
Fantastic. So how long have you been doing hypnotherapy?
So I qualified in 2006.
Wow. So that's a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
So you're well qualified. You're well qualified to talk about the subject.
I don't know about well qualified. I guess, it's funny. I was just writing an article for somebody else just before we came on, and I was sort of saying, I'm still working on it. Even though I teach it, I'm definitely still working because I'm still finding out new stuff about hypnosis, new stuff about the way in which I interact with my clients, the way in which clients interact with me. So, I think it's a never-ending subject. It really is.
And I think you have to be aware of that. Like you're never gonna know everything. There's always gonna be something else to learn, and there's gonna be someone else to learn from.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got lots and lots of film footage of other, other trainers, and they're incredible. Some of the work that's come out of the last, I would say, 60 something years has been really mind blowing.
Fantastic. So we've just obviously talked about the fact that, you went from animation to hypnotherapy. Let's talk about hypnotherapy. Let's get really into the weeds of what it is. And then we can start talking about how it can apply to a dental practice.
Okay.
Perfect. So what is it?
What is hypnosis? That's a good question. Okay, so the simple answer to what is hypnosis, for those of you who don't know what hypnosis is: fixed focused attention. I hear you say that can apply to anything. Well, it does. And so the majority of our time, we're actually in fixed focused attention. We actually move gently into a trance state quite automatically, unknown to us. So I'm going to give you an example. You're driving a car, you go from A to B, you can't remember how you got there, but you get out, you slam the door, and suddenly you awaken from that moment of driving and you think, God, I've just passed through a number of traffic circles or roundabouts, whichever country we're listening in. I've had people walking across the street and I was able to slam on my brake at any time. I had kids in the back of the car, I had music going, I even had somebody, who made a phone call. Whatever happened in the car, you were still available to connect to what's going on with your outside surrounding. In fact, when you're driving in a particular way, when you're driving in this almost trance state, you're more likely to have a more efficient drive. So you're 6 times more efficient with your eyesight, your hearing, your reactions. So because of that, your drive is a lot smoother and you can respond to all these external experiences very easily. And yet you got out the car and don't really remember the journey. So it's not that hypnosis means that you forget everything you do. It actually means that you focus in on what you do. And if you apply that to any area of your life, your achievements will always be higher. You'll always gain something. The problem with hypnosis which is misunderstood, is people don't realize that slipping into it and having a hypnotist help you into it is the same thing. And they often think that if you're a hypnotist and I'm going to be the subject, you're going to make me do something I don't want to do, which has the sense of I'm out of control. Was so far from the truth. You're more in control, as I've just described. You're much clearer in your own mind, but you are highly suggestible. We're all suggestible anyway. So when you use that trance state to take on board suggestions, and our own are the most fundamental suggestions that we give ourselves, we act upon those all the time. But if you're willing and open to hear somebody else's suggestion, you'll be more willing to take it on board and use it for your benefit. And you'll only take those for your benefit. So that becomes different from stage hypnosis. When somebody goes up on stage, they will take on board suggestions from people, but they do it knowing that they're temporary. And so therefore they can just forget about them afterwards and pretend it was all a joke and didn't remember anything on stage, and and that was silly, wasn't it? A bit like being drunk. But during a hypnotherapy session or using it for, say, pain control, you're actually more in control. And I always say, if you go to a therapist who says, I can take you somewhere, I can do this to you, and you don't need to be in control, run a mile.
So that's a telltale of a dodgy therapist, or
I think the idea. I think they don't know their trade, maybe, because I do, hypnotherapy, and this is where it gets very complex. It's an unregulated body. It's unregulated around the world, and there's only a few countries that actually have banned it to any what we call lay therapists, people like myself, even. So we can't practice this unless we are a doctor, a dentist, or a psychotherapist. So because of that, there are only a few countries, as I say, that have that provision. But generally, in most countries, anyone can rock up and be a hypnotherapist. And the problem is you can look at a 2-day course, or you can look at a 200-hour to 400-hour course, which is my course, and you can see a difference. But both will equally qualify you as a hypnotherapist. Mm-hmm. So that's where the danger lies. Because it's unregulated, there's a little issue there. On the upside of being unregulated, it gives people like myself who are ethical, and you mentioned the ACHE, American Council of Hypnotist Examiners. This is a very highly ethical body to belong to. We know that we have a duty to our clients and ourselves to look after them and make sure that we are in alignment with pretty much most therapists. So because of this, we're giving a much safer hypnotherapy study. But if you're looking around, you might not always find that. You might not know who you're looking for, which is complicated. But as I say, for people like myself, having no regulation does allow me to explore how much deeper I can go, because I'm not restricted by methodology or technique as such. And somebody who's regulated in certain fields can't necessarily do that. So for instance, touch. Of course, whenever I use touch with a client, I will say to them, I'm going to use touch. It's all appropriate. And I'll tell them where I'm going to touch them and how. There's no shock there. But in many therapies, you're not even allowed to go that far to use touch. The problem is with hypnosis, using touch can make a huge difference. And the problem is if you don't use touch, you're missing a trick. You're actually not inviting something in that that can essentially transform the client's awareness to themselves.
Honestly, it's fascinating. Like, there are too many questions for me to ask in this podcast. So I'll just go with the first one that's come to mind. Is obviously we've all seen the stage therapist or the stage hypnosis, where there's, they invite people up to in a group, and they do whatever they do to get them into a trance, and then they're all doing different things. I think one of your colleagues, I think you suggested one of your colleagues, and I've seen, is it Mike
Mesmer? Yeah. So he's a stage hypnotist, and he has come on our course to teach, because I think understanding stage hypnosis is hugely valuable to being able to work with clients. When you're working in the environment of the dental industry, you're essentially being seen by more than one person. You're on stage. That can give you stage fright. That in itself, when I'm working with a kid, the parent is there. I have to educate the parent at the same time as the kid. So I'm also doing the same with the dentist or the dental team. Sometimes I train dentists and then work with them, but the rest of the team hasn't come along on the training. They need to understand what I'm doing and how. So I think having knowledge about stage hypnosis is fundamental to dental hypnosis.
Fantastic. So the next question is, so you were doing hypnotherapy. How did you get into the dentist and sort of medical field? Like, what was the journey into that? Like, 'cause that's obviously very specific.
It is very specific. I was really blessed. As I mentioned, you don't really know who your teachers are going to be when you start out this process. When I went to study hypnotherapy, I went online, and at that time, the internet was still in its early stage. And I know it's 2006, actually 2005, obviously, when I started looking. And I sort of went to the pyramid. Who trained the trainer? Who's at the top of the game? And a certain name kept coming up, a gentleman called Gil Boyne, and he was over in California at the time. So I phoned him up, and he says, "Hello, Daryl, I'm 82 years of age, and I'm not doing this anymore. But if you're in London, which I was at the time, you should talk to the man that knows my work better than I do." And I thought, you couldn't get a better recommendation than that. So I signed up immediately with Dr. John Butler, and he happens to be a PhD in endoneurochronology. He's taught midwives on the NHS, and he'd been doing this. When I met him, he'd already been in the industry, I would say, for about 15, 20 years, probably about the same as I am now, in fact. And his interest himself was in the medical field. He could see the potential. So when we were on his course, and there was only about 6 of us to begin with. I mean, now he's got, full school of 30 something people every time. And it's lovely. We're still incredibly good friends, colleagues. We talk all the time. But when I started studying with him, he was doing something called Hypno 5 Live, a film documentary of a chap called Dale who was going to have a hernia operation without any anesthetic. So John himself has already had a hernia operation with no anesthetic, with hypnosis. I see you go, ooh.
I'm just, for the listeners, I'm pulling really weird faces, like really, the idea of doing an operation without anesthetic, just like, yeah.
Interestingly, you have no pain, which is what I always say to people. You don't have pain, which when everybody goes, oh, that must have been painful. It's like, no, the opposite. There is no pain. If you don't feel anything when a scalpel cuts into your body, you're not going to feel anything afterwards either. So when you don't wake up from anesthetic going, whoa, what happened to my body? It's just been hit by a sledgehammer. You're just like, yeah, I'm totally cool with this. My body's, if you watch this one, Hypnosis 5 Live, you'll see Dale jump off the couch of the operating table, and the surgeon goes, no, just can't, no jumping, because he's feeling absolutely fine. He doesn't have any need for any painkillers or anything. I mean, this is another huge factor.
He started on himself.
So John has done hypnosis for himself, and you can see him on YouTube doing his hernia operation. Then he did this thing with Dale for 5 Live. Well, of course, this was during my study. At the time, I had, and I still do, a really good friend who happened to be a surgeon. And I was at one of their surgeon parties, as one does, and people said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a hypnotherapist." And I said, "Oh, did you see that 5 Live? Can you teach us?" Because the surgeons that I were meeting happened to be colorectal surgeons. And so they were all really interested in this. And I said, "Well, I don't know if I can teach you," because I'd literally just come out of studying with John. I said, "Well, I'll get someone who can teach you." So that started a journey with John and myself, teaching surgeons, anaesthetists, dentists, doctors, etc. So we started on that journey. We created something at that time called the IHMDP, the Institute of Hypnotherapy for Medical and Dental Practice. It was going very well. In fact, to the point where we were getting so busy that at one stage there was a dental show. It was the BDTA, I think the British Trade Dental Association, had asked us to come in and just do a live demonstration. So I was, fine. I managed to get a couple of clients. I got one completely phobic and one who was just, interested in what she could achieve. I wasn't even sure that the phobic one would show up, but so we went to do this live experience. And that morning I phoned up John, and John pretty much lives around the corner from the Olympia venue in London. And he says, "I'm stuck in traffic. I can't get there. I was like, "Okay, so down to me, I'll do it." And so the next client comes into the chair, and I'm doing, the way I'd thought that we were going to do it was maybe I'd do the hypnosis, John would talk to everybody, or John would talk to everybody, or John would do the hypnosis and I'd talk to everybody. It was, but it ended up that I was doing the talking at the same time as doing the hypnosis. So I really thrown in the deep end doing multitasking. And anyway, we had a huge amount of dentists watching. I mean, it was fascinating for them. The next lady was up, and I phoned up John. I said, John, are you coming? Are you okay? And he's like, I'm still stuck. And then he said, Sharon, you can do this yourself. You don't need me. And he said, you're totally qualified to be teaching. And he pretty much handed me the dentists. And he said, just, by this time I'd already worked with many, many dentists. And he said, look, I don't know anybody who's worked with as many dentists as you have. He said, this work inside out. You should be training the dentists. So that was where I took it from that point. I hadn't actually got my own training school at that time, but what I ended up doing was taking myself to individual private dental practices and training up a team, and that worked brilliantly. So, and I still do that to this day. I'll still be invited to a dental practice. I'll train up the team, and that's what we'll do.
Fantastic. So you're just where you were at the time and who you were being trained by just led you down the dental route.
John was a fantastic, and he still is. He's a great mentor. And I think, in all honesty, that was the best way of throwing a student in, which he did to me more recently, which was when I moved to the States. He's like, right, time to set up your own school. I was like, no, I'm not sure. And he's, no, you really now need to set up your own school. I moved to the Midwest, and we didn't have a school that trains what's called transforming therapy in the style that was under the auspices of Gil Boyne. By the way, I did actually get to study with Gil Boyne. He did come to
Fantastic. He came back, did he?
He did, and I studied my master's with him, which was great.
That's awesome. So what I'd love to know is, did you ever find out whether John actually was in traffic or whether he did it as a training exercise?
Knowing John, he probably was in traffic. He's a busy man, and he really was able to sort of say, you can do this, and he had my back. And I really felt like, okay, if he feels that I'm capable and ready, and I really was. I mean, it was evident by this time. I'd done a lot of dental experiences.
Fantastic.
Including my own, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry, Sharon?
including my own. I had my own wisdom
Yeah.
teeth taken out without anaesthetic.
Oh, fantastic! So you're actually first-hand experience of it actually in practice.
Oh yeah, I really believe that if you're going to do this as part of your speciality, it's well worth being able to put yourself in the position of your client and also know what that really feels like. I mean, what are the difficulties? What are the challenges? It taught me so much. I had it done with 2 different dentists, and both times I learned a huge amount from both experiences.
Amazing. So obviously, I guess, be it going like sort of pain-free is one of the benefits. What are the other benefits to a patient of going through hypnotherapy, or why would a patient consider hypnotherapy in the first place?
It's interesting. Patients are often the ones that consider the hypnosis before the dentists. And they do so because they're desperately in need of going to a dentist, and they've got a phobia, and their teeth are cracking, they're falling out. One of the things I ask my dentists when I do a big talk, I ask them, hands up, how many of you are seeing phobic patients, and all the hands go up, and I'm like, that's not true. None of you are. None of you see a phobic. They don't come in. You see a high anxiety, but a phobic won't come in. A phobic, really, if they do enter in, it's because they are in absolute need to the max, and only then will they just about let you look in their mouth, and at that point they're pretty much out the chair or fainted or thrown up, or you've not got far anyway. So it's usually the clients that come to me. They're the ones that insist on using hypnosis for fear, anxiety issues, TMJ problems, bruxism, teeth grinding, clenching, gag reflex, that kind of stuff. So I get a lot of referrals from clients, and obviously I've got a YouTube channel which is under my name, which you can find, so you can see that. But I also get a lot of referrals from the dentist saying, I can't see my patient. They really need to see me. Could you see them beforehand so that I can work with them? So for a client to come in, they're immediately going to be much more receptive, much more compliant, much more open, more relaxed. I mean, imagine working with a relaxed client who was once a phobic or a high anxiety, who has lessened. It's even better to go from phobic to high anxiety. It's just, if you can get them from one notch down a notch, and then from that notch again down a notch, and then from that take it down. I don't say it's all going to happen all at once, because it just doesn't. That would be, stupid to pretend it does. But in some cases it can, but not all the time. So, and also I work a lot with kids, just to help them get into the mode of toothbrushing or flossing or having good dental hygiene habits. Or many of you guys see patients that have issues around smoking, and that kind of thing is really helpful. So yeah, there's the benefits. Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest benefits I'm going to say here for the dentists out here is those clients that have used hypnosis, whether it's through you or through a hypnotist who you have recommended generally, or somebody who's linked with you, you'll get more referrals. It's a moneymaker. On every level, it's a moneymaker. You've got clients who come back. They will come back for repeat sessions. They will come back for more treatment. Every time they come back, they're more excited by what they can achieve. In most cases, you won't need to use anesthetic, which is really helpful for those people who have got drug addiction. You don't want to be planting back into them these concoctions. You certainly don't want to be giving them after medication if they can help it. So it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Are there any other benefits to a practice in offering hypnosis?
Yeah, practice. The benefits are to the practice. I actually go in and talk to some practices just to help calm the practice down, and to work with the team themselves for in-house problems. And so I'll go in and I'll get them all to relate to each other in a different way, into a more intimate way, so that they can connect without all this garbage that they come with in the conscious level. They can now express it from a different place, or they can see where it comes from within them. So on a practice side, the practice is calmer, in terms of, if the dentist and dental nurse are both using hypnosis, there's a really lovely energy between them. If they work with the patient, who's also a part of that system, I always call it the witch's cauldron. There's the whole team. You're all working together. It's not that you are doing something to your patient. Your patient is on board with their treatment, and they are involved by managing their responses. There are so many benefits. As I mentioned, financial is definitely one of them. You will get more clients coming to you because they are receptive to the fact that you do this and you're interested in their welfare. You will have a higher stay of team members because you, again, are interested in their welfare, and they will feel calmer at work. You will feel calmer at work. You'll know how to manage your own issues in a different way. Your physical body will feel better because I know all of you are hunched over in this small space. Well, wouldn't it be great if you learned how to manage those sensations? So yeah, it's on every level, it works for everyone.
Fantastic. So there's countless benefits to the patient, countless benefits to the practice. I know we talked about it before the podcast started, but you're very scientific focused, and what you do has research, and it's all kind of, it's not woo woo as you mentioned it. So what would you say to anyone that's kind of on the fence or is a little bit skeptical about introducing hypnotherapy into their practice?
Well, everyone's skeptical. I mean, it's I work with, I really, when I'm working with anesthetists and surgeons, they're incredibly skeptical. I've got a wonderful video of a chap, he's now retired, lovely man from the King Edward, is it the King Edward Hospital in London. Anyway, he was probably one of the most skeptical. In fact, he was so skeptical, he made sure that his anaesthetist was on hand because there's no way this woman could have the treatment she was going to have without anesthetic. It was a bone graft. It was taking multiple teeth out. It was a big deal. And she did it perfectly well. I had no doubts in my client at all. And he just said, after 40 years, you've just changed my entire concept of what I thought hypnosis was. And he said, you've changed everything I've ever seen. So it was, he was blown away. Unfortunately, he retired soon after that. And he just, I think he said, I wish I'd come to this earlier. I'm my feeling is, nowadays, to approach the younger dentists, because they're far more open and they recognize that if they want to get more clients to their office, it's important that they have an extra tool. But generally, everyone's skeptical. I mean, even my students, I was skeptical. I didn't get how this worked until I saw it, until I did it myself. Even when I go into my own process, whether I'm having my teeth cleaned or having a tooth removal or whatever, or a filling done, I'm always skeptical of myself. It's natural. But if skepticism prevents you from learning, then it's pointless. If skepticism is there to help you make a clear judgment of what might be useful to you, then I'm fine with anyone being skeptical, but still come along and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. So it can probably a case of more people need to know about it, and more people just need to experience it for themselves. That would completely change the skeptical people.
Oh yeah, I mean it does. It really does. And I have complete newbies that come on my training, to people that have return because they love what they see. And it takes time to learn. When I'm teaching dentists, they don't put that much time into this. And they regret it. I know that they regret it, because sometimes they just come with the dentist, and I'm like, every time, please come with more than one person to the events, or please study with your partners, your team members. And they're like, oh no, I'll just try it out first. And then they go, wow, this is amazing. I wish such and such had come on. I'm like,
classic.
So I say these things, and I'm not saying it for my benefit to get more money. I'm saying it for the entire experience benefit. I mean, I'll get more money from other people coming, individuals anyway, but for them to have the real experience, isn't it great if you've learned together, practice together, and keep doing this together? Then you really have a full experience. So that's why I get a lot of people retaking, because they've come on their own, and then they have to come back and they
Come
say,
again with
do it again.
I love that. So if people are listening and they are right, I want to try hypnotherapy. I want to introduce hypnotherapy to the practice. Like, how do you go about doing that? Like, what is the first step?
Well, first step would be, I'd say, contact me. As you mentioned, Mike, my website is academyforhypnosis.com. That's a really easy way of just putting your foot in the door. We have a really small intro session. You can, I'm really open and flexible. If you want to come and sit in on supervision class, if you want to just take the foundations, if you want to take the foundations in the medical dental side of things, if you want me to come into practice, I travel around the world. So if that's a way in. The more the merrier. I always say, if we can fill up a bigger venue, again, not for my sake, but for yours, because when you study with other people, you get a really complex experience, a complex view of how to manage multiple styles of people. And I teach all the way from working with special needs, children, adults with special needs, and just general adults. So it's, and parents, all of these things come into play. So, it's worthwhile. And I've offered many times for when I do my live programs, for the dentist to bring a patient with them. So we can work on that patient, as long as they're obviously available to do so and they feel comfortable. They'll learn enough to get over their issues in that training anyway. But I always say, look, if you've got somebody you're not sure, bring them along so you can experience what it's like. For them, it's a great experience.
Yeah, fantastic. And can anyone be hypnotized, or is it you have to be a certain type of person, or have to think a certain way?
That's a great question. And there are so many different answers to that, because there are so many different studies about who's hypnotizable. And we've got this list of the least hypnotizable, the most hypnotizable. But I just think it doesn't work in that. I mentioned to you at the very beginning, when you move into the hypnotic state, into that trance state during a car drive, for example, well, you'll do the same watching a movie, you do the same reading a book, you do the same dancing. If you're an athlete, you do the same, perhaps running, jumping, playing tennis. We move into that state so frequently that, yes, the answer is anyone is available to moving into trance state. Is everyone available to take on board suggestions? No. Is everybody willing to take on board suggestions? No. If they do take on board suggestions that are healthy or healthful for them, then yes, they're going to be available, and that will take them into a hypnotic state a lot easier. People with special needs, I've been told, oh no, you can't, work with, people who have got, various disabilities. I've never found that to be the case. In fact, I've found it to be even easier in some cases. You just got to work your way around and see, I do bring in a lot of improv into my course. You have to understand that you've got to be flexible, but you have to be flexible as a dentist. You don't know who's coming through your door. And I have to say, most people that walk through the door, they do have what we call white coat syndrome. So they're already taking themselves into a hypnotic state of sorts, but it may or may not be beneficial. So for some people, they'll walk into the room, they see the white coat, they hand over authority, and they'll sit back in the chair, relax, and say, right, my mouth is going to be massaged. It's going to have a good treatment. I really trust this person, as opposed to the person who walks in. The fear is already there. This person's got a white coat. I don't want them to go near me. They're really scary. I don't want to look at them. And they're also in a hypnotic state. They're just giving themselves suggestions which they are acting upon. So as I say, the answer to the question is long but short in that everybody's available for this state of mind.
Yeah.
Whether they choose to go into it or not is a different question.
Okay, fantastic. That's a great answer, Sharon. So, based on your experience of being a business owner yourself, and also obviously having worked with lots of dentists and dental practices, what's your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice?
You're going to be putting a lot of money into your reception, your equipment, you're investing. One of the things that I always come up against is there's very little investment in what's going on in the patient's mind. That equipment means nothing if you can't get a person through your door. That equipment doesn't add up to anything for that patient. They really don't care. They're pleased that you have good equipment, but what they really want to know is, are you going to look after me? And if they walk through the door and they have someone on reception who is less than open to their fear, their problems, you won't get them coming back. That equipment counts for nothing. So if you're going to set up a dental practice, really consider the equipment is for you. It is to help you do the best job you can do. The equipment, the amount you've paid for that doesn't mean anything to your patient.
Brilliant. Perfect. Love that, Sharon. That's fantastic. It's a really good point. So then finally, Sharon, this has been fantastic. If anyone listening would love to talk to you, how can they do that? How can they reach you?
I'm really easy to get hold of. So you can just get hold of me at sharon@academyforhypnosis.com. And you can even find me on my YouTube channel, Sharon Waxkirsh, and there are, ways to find me on there. But Sharon at academyofhypnosis.com is the easiest way to get hold of me personally.
Fantastic. I'll probably include the link to your LinkedIn, which I think is how we met.
That's right. We met on LinkedIn. Yes. Yeah, I'm not always on there, but I saw, your enthusiasm and what you're doing for dentists, and I thought, yeah, this guy understands the issues that dentists have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for your time today. I have learnt a lot. I'd love to experience it at some point. I know I need to have an implant at some point, so that could be an interesting.
Happy to help.
That could be very interesting.
As I say, I'm in this Midwest, and especially in lockdown, I did most of my clients nowadays are on Zoom. But I as soon as lockdown happened, I had a client in New York at the time, and I was in the Midwest, so it's a 5-hour flight from where I live, so I wasn't going to get and do that. And he had to have a number of teeth removed, and we did it by WhatsApp. So
WhatsApp,
we did
a video or just text.
Video, WhatsApp video.
Wow.
So I saw the whole thing on WhatsApp. So all these things are possible. Although I must say, I do like being in the room.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Sharon, thank you again so much for your time. Really enjoyed sort of getting to know more about you and what you do and stuff and how it can benefit a practice. So I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you very much.